Hey, what's going on, guys? Sage here with Dirt Time Adventures, and today we're going to be looking at the second principle of the 6 principles of survival, and you probably guessed it, first aid and security. So we've already discussed the first part of the 6 principles of survival, which is to mitigate risk and fear. If you missed that part, be sure to go back and watch one of our previous videos to catch up. Today we're going to be looking at the second principle, which is to meet first aid and security needs. And it is so vitally important that you understand your first aid kit and how each part works, and then to have a healthy understanding of how to provide wilderness first aid. First, I want to start off, though, talking about 4 of the most common first aid mistakes that we see when out in the bush. We teach over 150 days a year, and so we're commonly out there, and we often see multiple first aid injuries that require self-aid. And these could have been prevented, or at least enabled them to be able to provide proper care if they would have had just a little bit of know-how. First aid and security could save your life. That's why it's important that you avoid these 4 common mistakes. The first one that I want to talk about is gimmicky first aid kits. There are a lot of first aid kits on the market. All of them have some good items in them, but a lot of them have a lot of junk. They just chunk in a bunch of stuff in there to be able to make it look like a first aid kit, and then they crank up the price and sell it to you. Your best bet is to take and build your own kit. Now, what I like to do is I'll take a kit that what I would consider somewhat gimmicky, and I would take out the stuff I don't need and apply some of the stuff that I highly recommend. And so the benefit to that is you can still use the case in which it came in, which many of the cases are great for storing first aid supplies. So this one here is what I call my personal IFAC, my individual first aid kit, and at one point in time, it had a lot of gimmicky stuff in it, but since then, I've been able to put in a lot of stuff that really is helpful and beneficial to me. In the front here, I've added a little multi-tool and some tweezers and a little knife. Inside here, though, once I open it up, I'll give you a close-up here. I have some different ointments from sunblock to antibiotic cream, and a big important thing is tape. You can never have too much gauze and tape. Other than that, it's pretty much made up of various size band-aids, some water treatment tablets, some antibiotic wipes, and most importantly, some of my favorite band-aids. There's a lot of different band-aids on the market, but these NextCare waterproof bandages are absolutely my favorite. So having a good variety of moleskins, water procurement, water treatment, and different ointments and stuff, bandages, and then also having a CPR mask in my individual IFAC is critical. I know what's in here. It may not be the most organized, but I know I can get to it. And then on the outside, I have attached some antihistamine, Benadryl type pills to help with any type of allergic reactions. For years before I ever even decided to carry my own IFAC, all I carried with me was some bandana and some good old-fashioned duct tape. I can't tell you how many times I've treated myself with these 2 simple items. So your kit does not have to be complicated. It can be something as simple as a bandana and some duct tape, or one of my favorites when I'm going out on a small hike, I'll just carry a simple pack of gauze with some antibiotic ointment and some tape. I also have a couple butterfly closures in here for if my wound ends up being wide. This will treat a good majority of all my wounds. Which brings me to the second most common mistake that I see in first aid is that people do not carry proper trauma treatment equipment. So they'll have all these complicated survival kits, they'll have inadequate supplies, or just tons of useless stuff that you're never going to use in a wilderness environment. They're more designed for an in-home setting or a controlled environment. But in the wild, in the wilderness, it's important that you have a trauma kit. And that is all this bag is. I keep it with me in my car. I keep it with me when I go on backpack trips. And I keep it with me whenever I'm teaching classes. Because this pack here, I'm not going to break it completely down, but it has, once again, a CPR mask, and the primary thing that this kit has is trauma care. Giant trauma dressings. It'll have tourniquets. It's going to have ACE wraps, tons of bandages, tapes, gloves, and some of my scissors to cut clothing off. So this really is my trauma kit. And then in the sides, it just has more pressure dressings and more gloves. I'm telling you, you cannot have enough adequate dressings, sterile dressings, to be able to pack your wounds and provide adequate trauma care. A lot of the things that you're going to face in a first aid environment are not life-threatening, and so we provide our kits for those non-life-threatening first aid incidents. But what happens when you find yourself in a life-threatening first aid scenario and you don't have a proper kit with trauma gear in it? You're going to end up dead. In this kit, I even have a stapler. It's a precise stapler to provide staples to deep wounds. So having an adequate trauma kit is vital, especially if you're going to be doing any type of instruction or going out on long treks or any type of dangerous adventures. The struggle with carrying a trauma kit and an IFAK is it becomes bulky, and if it becomes obtrusive, then you're not going to carry it. So make sure that your system is modular however you take it. The great thing about this is it has MOLLE strapping on the back, so I can strap it to most of my packs. The third most common mistake that I see out in the bush is people just do not have first aid training. They have taken a first aid CPR class, and I'm not going to knock any of those guys that offer those, but you just don't learn the skills that you need in a 2-hour class. A perfect example is a lot of the classes we have, they just don't know how to treat simple cuts, so they will come to the instructors every time they get a cut or a blister, and a lot of those things we kind of expect you to be able to treat yourself. We do have trained medical staff here on hand, but it's important that you know how to treat yourself in certain medical conditions. So make sure you have adequate training. Make sure you know how to use the items in your kit, especially when it comes to using tourniquets or, you know, trying to stitch up a wound with needle and thread. Make sure you know what you're doing. The fourth and fairly common mistake that we see in first aid is what I like to call folk medicine. And this consists of having a mindset of old means for treating medical conditions. This could be everything as simple as trying to suck poison from a wound or having so-called cure-alls. A common one we hear about is people taking like plantain and thinking it treats everything. They'll make a poultice, chew it up in their mouth because that's the way they were taught, and shove it in a wound. And all you're doing there is introducing new bacteria into your wound because your mouth is filled with bacteria. So it's best just to crush it up. Another one is thinking of plants like clover and how they think some people are convinced that they cure cancer, and we just have all this folk medicine out there, these false treatments. So it's important that you stay up to date with current medical treatments. So on our website, we have provided a small little first aid checklist. I encourage you to get online, download it, print it off, and then we've left plenty of spaces for you to fill in other items that you might find of importance. Once again, first aid manual, bandages, gauze, and wraps and tapes are vital. Those are going to be always at our top. It's good to have tweezers and stuff for ticks, and I think I actually got them on here twice, but either way, be sure to scratch it out, put something else in there if you need to. And then there'll just be different things like hydrocortisone cream for itching, triple antibiotic ointment. So the last thing I want to mention about first aid is make sure that you're regularly checking your first aid kit, especially if you know you've gotten into it recently. It's so important that you are aware of the contents of your first aid kit. In the event that you do happen to have a serious first aid situation, you know what is in there and you know how to use it. Always be sure to check expiration dates on some of the equipment and some of the stuff that might be in it. And then always, once again, make sure you stock it every time you use something out of it. Moving on to security, I want us to take a look at some understandings that security is more than just having a gun or a firearm and knowing how to use it. Security is a matter of a mindset, being prepared for anything that might happen, that might come up or arise, causing a security situation. So having security protocols in place could be vital to, once again, your survival. Anytime you begin to realize that you're in a survival situation that's going to require you to be overnight, or whether you're just out camping period, it's important that you are aware of your surroundings and that you establish a perimeter around your camp. Make sure that you have not set up underneath any type of deadfalls, that you're on any type of game trails, or that you're not going to be in any type of severe area that's going to cause weather to be an issue, such as flooding. It's make sure that you have understanding of, once again, your surroundings so that you know what resources are available to you and what things could cause you harm. Once you have established your perimeter and understand what your surroundings are, then you begin to need to think about your personal safety and defense. And whether you're carrying a firearm or a machete, one of the first tools that I always begin to make anytime I'm out in the bush for an extended period of time is some form of spear. So you may find it rather silly to think about creating a spear in a survival situation when you find yourself without a weapon. But the reality is, even something as primitive or as simple as a spear can serve its purpose in creating distance between you and the animal or thing that's trying to harm you. So no matter what your circumstances are in the wilderness, make sure that you have some form of defense. That could be something as simple as turning this into a walking stick, and so when you're hiking through the woods you have a walking stick, or having some type of knife or sharp object on your person, or a firearm. Make sure you listen to your state laws, check into those, because certain state parks won't allow you to carry certain items. But you can always carry a big stick, and it will serve a purpose. Fire harden the tips, and this will definitely pierce through the flesh of most animals. Probably not getting through a rhinoceros, but hopefully if you're in the eastern woodlands, you're not going to run into a rhinoceros. So get out there, practice making you a spear. I wrapped this one here particularly in some different vines and cordages so that my students could see that you do not have to have rope in order to make a spear. So create some type of defense weapon for your security protocol, always having something in place. Once again, setting a perimeter around your camp, understanding your surroundings, and then once again, when it comes to your shelter, make sure that it's secure. This could be everything from backing your shelter up against some rocks, surrounding yourself with briars. Fire is a key aspect to security. Fire is one of the most important survival skills because not only does it provide you a microclimate of shelter, and we'll talk about this later on, but it also provides you the ability to cook food, to hydrate by boiling your water, to treat wounds by sterilizing your medical equipment, or to cauterize, which heaven forbid you ever have to do that, and it meets your primary security need. All animals hate fire. They just are afraid of it. It's kind of ingrained into their creation. You got to think about mankind. We don't have teeth, sharp razor teeth and long claws, so we were gifted with intuition and wisdom to be able to create sharp objects and tools and things like fire to help defend ourselves and protect ourselves. You know, it's not till the crap hits the fan does security really become a forefront on our minds. We often think when we go out into the wild that everything's going to be harmonious and beautiful and nothing could go wrong until Murphy's Law kicks in and the crap hits the fan, and what could go wrong does go wrong, and then you find yourself wishing that you would have made your security a little more of a priority. I could think of a perfect example here recently at one of our classes. We had a Smokey the Bear decided to come into camp and literally busted up a bunch of the students' beer bottles, drank their beer, probably tipsy as a mofo after that, but this bear proceeded to keep coming into camp and trying to raid everyone's supplies. Whereas if we would have had a simple form of security, some type of perimeter set up around, And if the least we could have done was put in our food in bear bags and put up the food up out of the reach of the bear, keeping food out of camp, we could have avoided that situation. Luckily, you know, he was a young bear and just decided that he wanted to stir up a mess and once again just create a little bit of ruckus. We was able to run him off, but stuff like that could have been avoided if we were just a little more mindful of our security. And so make sure, once again, don't set up on game trails or where animals are active. Sometimes that's not possible because of the environment, but definitely be aware of your surroundings. Have a perimeter set up. It can be something as simple as tying a string and creating a tripwire attached to some noisemakers like cans or some type of metal object, taking your water bottle, if you got a stainless steel water bottle, filling it with some different things to bang against it. Anything you can do to help prevent yourself from, you know, jeopardizing your security, you're going to be better off because of it. So 3 different ways that kind of triggered off. One, I got tangled in it. So it literally tangled me up. One of the Y's caught around the backside of the string and pretty much had almost a kind of a makeshift snare. Still, as I fought out of it, the clanger, the noisemaker, still eventually crashed and would have woke me up if I was in my camp. The other was still tripping the wire, and eventually it did kind of catch up on my leg a little bit, but as soon as I walked my next step, it dropped and made noise. And the final one was stepping on it. I wanted to see how it would work if I stepped on the wire, and it worked just fabulous, so just like you would imagine. So anything like a makeshift trip line is going to help provide you some security, at least give you that second reaction time, and help you to respond adequately. And your hope is that the sound alone or the tangling up of the foot is enough to run the animal off. It's not always going to help or work, but anything you can do to help, once again, provide you some security and give you some peace of mind and comfort, you're going to be better off because of it. So once again, guys, thanks for checking out another episode on 6 Principles of Survival. I want to encourage you guys to, once again, always share, subscribe, and stay tuned for the 3rd principle coming up.